Kia ora koutou. Welcome. Let's start by talking about image, perception, and reputation. Image is the general impression that a person, organisation, or product presents to the public. Perception is the way in which something is regarded, understood, or interpreted. And reputation is the beliefs or opinions that are generally held about someone or something. Please note, this is a trigger warning. I apologise for any offence. Image can be used as a tool to change perception. The word swastika and its associated symbol is Sanskrit for it is well-being, good existence, and good luck. It has a 12,000-year history. Its meaning was twisted, and now it has an association with murder and hatred. In contrast, the crucifix, famously used to carry out the death of martyrs, has changed to symbolise hope and faith. Image is essential to organisations and individuals. Image is what the customers and employees perceive the organisation to represent, whether that is by purely visual, as in logos, via taglines or mission statements and reports. So on to the image-making crisis theory. They are image repair theory and situational crisis communication theory. Crises affect image. It is not important whether the organisation is in fact responsible for the crisis, but whether they are thought to be responsible. Also, it is not that the act is offensive, but whether it is believed to be offensive. Image repair theory is looking at how to mitigate damage to an image in a crisis. It uses 5 strategies to achieve this. Firstly, denial. Either we didn't do that, or shifting the blame with it was their fault. Secondly, evasion of responsibility. Using provocation, we did this because they did that. Defeasibility, we were not aware of this. Accident, or good intentions. Thirdly, reducing offensiveness. Using bolstering, make the organisation look good. Minimisation, it is not that bad. Differentiation, we are making changes. Transcendence, we did this for the betterment of all people. Or attack the accuser, they did worse things. And lastly, compensation, we have given free stuff to them. Fourthly, corrective action, we promise to improve. And fifthly, mortification, which is where we apologise. These strategies are used when there is a contingency plan, analysis of the crisis, identification of the relevant audience, for instance stakeholders, and then the decision on whether the organisation should respond or not. The second theory is situational crisis communication theory, or SCCT for short. SCCT is based on attrition theory, which posits that people search for causes of events, make attributions, especially those that are negative and unexpected. SCCT is looking at the organisation reputation in a crisis. There are 3 strategies in SCCT. Firstly, shape attributions of the crisis. We do this by looking at initial crisis responsibility, also looking at crisis history and prior relational reputation. Secondly, we look at changing perceptions of the organisation in crisis. And thirdly, reduce the negative effect generated by the crisis. There are 2 types of response strategies in SCCT. Primary, which are deny and dismiss response strategies, and secondary, which are bolstering and building response strategies. Primary response strategies include attack accuser, denial, scapegoat, excuses, justification, compensation, and apology. Secondary response strategies include reminder, basically how great we were or are, ingratiation, and victimage, which is we're also a victim of this crisis. Thank you. That is image repair theory and situational crisis communication theory.
Let's touch on chaos theory in a crisis management situation. So in the dictionary, chaos theory is defined as a state of total confusion with no order. This theory first was established by French mathematician Henri Poincaré, but gained popularity from research undertaken by Edward Lorenz about 70 years later while he was studying global weather patterns in 1961. A real life example of this would be the global weather pattern. In the global weather pattern, you can see the effect small changes have on the overall outcome. There are so many influential factors, and it has a slight predictability, but as you can see, small influences can affect that predictability. So if we look at chaos theory and crisis management, so to begin, chaos theory, when being applied in any business setting or in relation to a crisis in a business, it's still being investigated and it is really in its infancy, and the application is still being understood. As a leader, a good understanding of chaos theory will enable you to have smart decision making in complex situations. Small changes at a decision making level can have a vast effect on the final outcome. As quoted in one reading, one small mistake at the beginning will have irreparable misses at the end. I guess if you think to the butterfly effect, the flap of a wing in South America can lead to a storm in North America. So that's highlighting the effect a small change can have on the overall picture. So some of the chaos theory learnings for a crisis is chaos theory supports the idea of shared leadership and learning from experiences. You have to have an awareness of the impact from small changes and how that decision-making process can affect the outcome. It's also the importance of multiple information sources, so you have to keep your mind open and be looking everywhere for the information to make correct decisions. You need to stress the importance of multiple points of view from your team, and have some flexibility around your decision making, and once you've made a decision, be flexible on what you do and take advice from team members. And you need to consider and plan for multiple outcomes from any event. So chaos theory enable planning for crises? Sure does. The three key things to think about while you're doing that is plan for all the unexpected events that can arise. You've got to learn by experience, and you've got to work as a team to improve the teamwork and to share any responsibility. In summary, chaos theory and crisis may be seen as part of the natural organisational process, purging elements of the system which are outdated and inappropriate and creating new and expected opportunities for growth and change.
Good evening. The next crisis management theory is called complexity theory and is derived from the same base understanding as chaos theory. When we look at the application of complexity theory in crisis leadership, we can see that it supports the idea of shared management and leadership. It also acknowledges the importance of multiple sources of information and multiple points of view, and dealing with incomplete information. This can be seen in the Situation Room in the White House, when team members share knowledge and expertise to resolve a situation. We're already very familiar with complex situations and complexity, but the complexity theory derives itself from research in the natural world, which studies uncertainty and nonlinear systems. A good example of this is the flight of a flock of birds or a school of fish, where there is no central control, a variety of affecting factors, and a lack of predictability. In complexity theory, crisis is not seen as a blunder on the part of the organisation. In fact, the purpose of crisis management is transformation, rather than trying to restore the organisation to its pre-crisis status. Leaders need to be able to improvise, be flexible, adaptable, and be able to work with limited predictability. Complexity theory has since been adopted to describe human social systems, such as political, institutions, and the organisational realm. When applied to organisations, like the natural world, we see that there is a shift towards self-organisation, that there's little planning, that there's a formation of networks and high unpredictability. Like the chaos theory, we also see that small change can have large consequences, but at the same time, major shocks can have only small consequences. The unpredictable nature of crises makes planning for crisis management and leadership more difficult. Complexity theory supports learning by doing and improvised teamwork. An analogy of this could be a soccer team preparing for a match, where the weather, condition of the players, condition of the pitch, and attitude of the supporters will all affect the outcome. The team nonetheless does its best in training and during the match itself to win, but without any guarantee. More exposure to similar situations will improve the potential of a good performance. The same could be seen in Christchurch, where the emergency services benefited from their experience in the earthquake in 2011 when dealing with mass casualty situations following the massacre in 2019. So in summary, complexity theory suggests that leadership through a crisis situation will require a fluid approach. Leaders will have to deal with a lack of information and show flexibility and adaptability to deal with unpredictable situations. The physicist Stephen Eubank resumed, "There are so many ways for a complex system to fail that it is impossible to prepare for them all." Thanks for listening.
Everybody. So the next theory we're going to discuss is resilience theory and how resilient leadership is demonstrated through a crisis. Firstly, it's good to explain that resilient leadership is a term that's used to describe leadership behaviours that help others withstand a crisis and adapt to or rebound from extreme challenges. An effective leader will make decisions during a crisis, that can assist in preventing further crisis from occurring. So what makes a resilient organisation? An organisation's resilience is drawn from its planned and adaptive capabilities. Organisations that invest in their planned resilience capabilities are able to sense change as it emerges and take action to minimise the downside risk. They're able to prevent many crises from ever occurring, and when crisis does occur, they manage and respond to them quite effectively. Planned resilience capabilities will only get an organisation so far though. No crisis ever fits the plan, and organisations inevitably need to find ways to adapt and evolve. People guide their lives and their beliefs by personal efficacy, and just sort of moving on from about an organisation's resilience and their adaptive capabilities, whilst these planned and adaptive organisation capabilities are the key to resilience, human behaviour also needs to be a driver. Social information processing theory argues that the social environment provides cues that individuals may use to construct and interpret events. In accordance with this theory, we can think about human behaviour as a bottom-up approach. There's a few ways to assist leaders to build self-efficacy, and one is resilience by doing. Allowing people to success, using successive approximation, allow people to develop an increasing sense of self-efficacy realised via their own agency. Vicarious resilience is around assigning people to successful working groups and projects so they too can experience a sense of shared success. Resiliency via interpersonal support is about encouragement and coaching and mentoring and finding positive people to provide support, such as a buddy system. Psychologic self-regulation teaches people to mitigate stress arousal. A theory that's used in crisis communication is the Discourse of Renewal. Organisational learning requires the organisation as a whole to take account of a crisis situation and consider what caused the crisis to occur and consider how it should have been handled. Crisis often makes the weak parts of an organisation or an organisation's response to the plan quite visible. This visibility allows these vulnerabilities to be examined and remedied in order to prevent similar occurrences or failures from occurring in the future. Multiple stages exist within the Discourse of Renewal framework, but each of these stages contain core components that provide an expectation for what an organisation should achieve within each stage. A couple of the key significant stages, I'll just talk about two. One is around responding to a crisis with ethical communication, and that's simply about organisations needing to be honest and moral and ethical when addressing the public, their stakeholders, or the audience who are observing this crisis regarding the status of the crisis and the information they know regarding its causes and consequences. So transparency is a key. Effective organisational rhetoric is another example, and simply that's about organisations in crisis being able to communicate with the public and stakeholders who are affected by that crisis.
Hi, today I'm going to talk to you about two social media crisis communication theory. So theory one we'll discuss is the network crisis communication theory, which relates to the medium used and how that impacts crisis messaging. And then the second theory we're going to refer to is the social mediated crisis communication model, which relates to as social networks and blogs become more popular, people spend more time online during a crisis. So I'd like to draw your attention to a key fact. So there are currently 7.6 billion people worldwide, of which there are 3.484 billion people connected via social media. So network crisis communication theory work has begun to consider the effects of media type on crisis message effectiveness. So messages distributed via social media can prompt a different response from the public, versus the same messages delivered via traditional media. So as we know, social media is much more engaging, it's much more personal. Typically it's delivered via a handheld device that people have on them all the time. So it also looks at how organisations may use media to mitigate potential negative outcomes. So effectively get on the front foot. So as I've mentioned earlier, there were 3.84 billion people worldwide connected via social media. And it just enables a organisation to potentially define the narrative. So the ability for a leader to show leadership via these new network platforms can remarkably improve the impact of the messaging, right? So, and it's delivered to a far broader audience. We look at new digital network mediums. They've proven to be extremely effective during crisis. Moving on to the social mediated crisis communication model. So this model aims to explain and predict how public transmit information, as well as how organisation may best communicate with public during crisis. 5 factors affect how organisations should engage with the public, right? So it comes down to crisis origin. Where has it been established? Is it internal versus external factors? Crisis type. How severe is the crisis? Is it a small PR incident, or is it a catastrophic failure, similar to the Boeing incident, which we will talk about in our case study? Organisational infrastructure is important too, and I'll talk specific to social media impact here. But is a company set up to deliver messaging via social networks? Do they have an engaged audience? Do they have a fan base? Could this message be better delivered by influencers on their behalf, right? Or done as a PR exercise? So crisis message form too, and we've spoken about that a little bit earlier in my presentation, but the way a message is delivered has proven to impact the messaging. So, is it a video versus a still image? Is it a press release versus a statement? Is it live or is it rehearsed? All of these have impact on the effectiveness of the messaging. So, and then finally, the crisis message source. So, is it again internal versus external? And can the message delivery be controlled by the organisation and damage control? So they're just some things to think about. Now, during a crisis, this model also looks at the 3 key publics that transport or transmit crisis information. So first and foremost is influential social media creators. So everything from micro influencers right through to your Donald Trumps of the world, your Jacinda Ardern's, your Logan Pauls, right? So Dan Bilzerian, another good example. So, these guys that have huge following, followers and fan bases, and they have an incredibly engaged audience. So then you've got social media followers, which again we spoke about a little bit earlier in the presentation. So 3.484 billion active users worldwide, 45% of the population. And then you've got social media inactives, which is exactly as it sounds. So I want to bring you back to our overarching theme, which is leadership in crisis. So if we're to talk about the key benefits of social media for delivery of leadership messaging during crisis. So your ability to target specific audiences is key. So the Facebook algorithm is intuitive, it's smart, it learns, right? So we can target via age, religion, likes, activity. It'll manually learn how long you spend on certain videos and the content of that video, and then it'll start to deliver up those or similar types of videos to you. So your ability to reach a broader audience is really important. So, you've no longer got geographical boundaries. So this is one of the benefits of digital media. So content is delivered live, raw and uncut, and therefore authentic, which may support Utz, Schultz and Glocker's NCC model, which challenges classical crisis communication theories by showing the medium used affects the impact of the crisis communication. So again, it's that theory around what is the content, how is it delivered, therefore does it have a significantly higher impact.